hour. So thank you. Welcome. For those of you who can turn on your cameras, please go ahead and do so. We're excited to have DC. Oh, what, Barb, did something disappear on your screen? Oh, never mind. Sorry, that was on my screen. Give me 1 second. I just lost all of you guys. Okay, I'm back. We're excited to have DC McGuire with us today to talk about using your brain for success as a real estate professional. DC's work includes neuroscience research, private brain coaching, public speaking, and business consulting. Neurochemistry, brain scanning, technology, and related techniques are the basis of her innovative applications and solutions for releasing anxiety, stress, trauma, conflict, addressing violence, along with increasing personal and professional success. Her academic background includes a graduate program in psychobiology with a cross-registration at Wellesley College at MIT, where she trained in psychoneuroimmunology. She also holds a graduate degree in clinical psychology, and as she just said, she lives in Santa Barbara and serves on the National Advisory Board of the Union of Concerned Scientists. She enjoys skiing, tennis, sailing, kayaking, and painting. And once she starts the presentation, we're going to go ahead and spotlight her for you. You can take pictures or do screenshots of any of her slides if you want to. We will be recording this, so the recording will also be available maybe tomorrow. I'll have it available. I'll send everyone a link. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just go ahead and type them in the chat box or use your reactions to raise your hand. And she will be taking questions throughout. And I do believe we'll also have some time at the end to take questions if you want to hold them until then. So welcome, DC. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. It's always what you expect a presenter to say, but this is really quite different. Let me tell you why. Given the world and the way it is right now, it seems to be progressively more challenging, more confusing, more out of control. Has anybody noticed that? Yeah, maybe just a little or a lot. And so to be here today, to be able to take actual science and translate it into practical information and some really easy, straightforward, simple skills, some tools that we'll talk about in this very brief time that can make a difference in your success in real estate and your well-being as a human in the world in general, with friends, family, and your community. So these are pieces of information and guidance that come from 19 years of neuroscience research, inspired by 9/11. And when I really became compelled to try and figure out what it is that can motivate us to put time, money, energy, focus into doing one thing or another. And sometimes it can be from the best intentions and making good in the world. And sometimes it can be horrific, causing a great deal of suffering. And what's going on? I mean, isn't that curious to think about? I can tell you that I have looked at enough brains on brain scans, and I could tell you if you're right-handed, left-handed, if you golf, if you play the violin, if you worry a lot. I can tell you lots of things from those brain scans, because the thing is that basically we're all born with the same brain. When I am dissecting brains, stay with me, it's because, at least they put good use. I'm dissecting brains on a bench in a lab. They all look the same, basically. So what changes? Now we know that what changes is what we practice more of. So, but what motivates us to do that? Now with 9/11 and with the kind of tragedies that we've had since then, or even just what you see around you every day, how is it that we are selecting certain things to say, certain things to do, certain ways to be? And basically, up till about now, we've had no idea what the answer to that is. And when I did some of my research, I looked at issues of like cultural influences, education, socioeconomic issues, gender, all those things. that wasn't enough of an answer, because you could find some other group that wouldn't have anything to do with it, or some other religion that wouldn't have anything to do with it. And so there was no way to do it. So I kept digging deeper. And that's where I went from neuroplasticity and epigenetics to neurochemistry. And that's where I found the answer. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because right now, in fact, if you're okay, go with me right now for a minute to your own life and your own experience, and think about, remember, a meeting where you've been in a meeting and somebody is saying, doing, reacting in ways that you're just sitting there going, what is this about? Because maybe it's tanking a project. It might be hurting their career. It might be just causing great dissension and upset in your organization. Can everybody kind of remember a time like that? Yeah. And how crazy that felt, didn't it? Or how about this? You get a phone call. You pick up your phone and you've got a client who's just raging about nothing. Or they're upset about a little detail that, just it really doesn't amount to that much. It might be something needs to be fixed, something adjusted. This person is outraged and off the wall. Feel like what that's like. I don't wish that on anybody, but I can't imagine any of us have ever been without that. So what's it like? And the next time you see that person's name come up on your own ID, how does it feel in your body? It's just, you want to go, oh, feel that. And this person who might be a fine person, but is acting out of control. Or how about a child who acts out in school? Because that way they get the attention in the classroom, but they also get the attention from the principal or their parents. And I don't know about you, but I know I can think back to times where I've left personal conversations, maybe with a child or with a colleague or a friend or family member. And I just asked myself, why did I say that? What was I thinking? That wasn't really what I wanted to say. Well, today we're going to look at what that's about. I'm going to give you the information and some tools. You won't need a prescription. You don't need special equipment or a trainer, degree in neuroscience or designer leotards or anything. These are straightforward kinds of ideas that you can apply and have the confidence it's based on science. This is not some kind of a training program. I've come up with a good idea and I think it's going to really help you. No, this is based on years of research. All right, and I'm going to share my screen with you here. Bear with me. All right. Now, we've been around for a long time and we've been guessing and doing our best. We've got the technology, we do, but how many times have you thought, I don't know that that's really helping us? Psychology has been trying to figure things out, and that's been really, helpful. And yet we're still just trying to manage things. We're trying to guess. And the fantastic thing is we've got directions, we've explained toothpaste. Who could brush their teeth without the directions on the back of a tube, right? Or shampoo. That's the one we all laugh about because we've got the instructions there, which tells us to do it twice. Or even if you get something at IKEA, they've got a helpline. You can call them. But how about our brains? Did anybody get an operator's manual? No. I didn't. I don't know about you, but I didn't. And here it is. The most creative, complex tool for good or not good, right between our ears. And nobody ever told us exactly what to do with it. And now what I can tell you is the brain is like a machine. And this is good news. It's not some elusive kind of bag of cells up here. It's a machine. And what we're discovering more and more is that we can learn how to drive it ourselves with very little information. Think about your car. How many of you could take your car apart and put it back together and could tell everybody anything they wanted to know about how it works? Anybody there? Raise your hand. No, not me either. However, think about this. All you had to do to run this incredible piece of machinery, which can't compare with the brain, by the way, in terms of complexity, was you learned how to step on the gas, how to put on the brake, how to turn the wheel, how to put the right fuel in it, and it gets you where you want to go. And that's what we want to think of as the brain. And this is our power. This is where we have the choice. Because once we understand where we want to put on the gas, where we want to hold back, where we want to turn the wheel, now we're in charge. This is huge choice, and this is huge personal power. So today we're going to apply it in general, but in specifically, we're going to apply it to your work in real estate, because this is, you're in a challenging field as far as the brain is concerned. And this is information that you'll be able to apply to everything in your life. We're going to talk today, by the time you leave, what you're going to be able to do is much better understand and predict why the people you work with are behaving and thinking as they do. And this will apply to everybody. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just kind of have this kind of X-ray vision and see when someone walks in or you're working with someone, what it is, what's going on? Now, we're not only going to know about what's going on for them, but of course, we're going to start with understanding to be able to predict and manage what we say and do so that you can trust yourself. You can have this confidence. You can go into any setting with an incredible advantage, because you're not likely to blindside yourself or to initiate any kind of a problem situation. You're going to be there to add to the outcome, the benefits of your being in that room and in that situation. And here are more specifically some things we're going to be looking at today. How to be able to improve communications, just in general, to make it easier, to make it flow, to make people feel at ease, for us to feel comfortable, and in negotiations to feel more of a sense of teamwork, that we're not adversarial, that we don't have to deal so much with dissension or with when you go to give some help, some critical help, perhaps some suggestions, that you don't get this defensiveness. To be able to be with clients, or whether it's with cross sales, that you can increase again, this interaction you can trust people, where there's transparency. And of course, what that does is it builds on your professionalism, your own sense of strength and your power in your profession. And with this, with your insight, with your ability to interact with people in ways they're comfortable to create the results you want, that you build this kind of authentic trust and loyalty as you go through your profession. And this makes you a role model. This makes you somebody that people want to work with, either as associates or out in the community or as a professional dealing with different kinds of transactions. So what we're looking at, our goal is, of course, that you're going to be able to find that you'll have listings and closings without so much effort, without stress. And that's where we're going today. So let's look at what's going on here that is going on behind the scenes, where we don't know so many times why we say and do things. It's not finding me to that. There we go. And have you ever felt like you weren't really under your own control? Like somebody else was. Where did those words come from? How did that happen? Well, what we're going to focus on today is a very special molecule, dopamine, or you're welcome to call it 3,4-dihydroxyphenylethylamine if you wish, but dopamine is just joking, is fine. Now, what we need to know, first of all, about dopamine, brain fact number one, is that dopamine's first priority is physical survival. This is very primitive. It's when we were, first evolving, and we had to eat as much, as much of the mammoth, woolly mammoth blubber, as many of the berries, as much of the honey as we could. So we learned to be attracted to fats and sugars. We had to be willing to take chances and go out there and explore the world to expand our opportunities to survive. We had to be able to procreate as much as possible, because if the average age lifespan was 18, you better have a lot of backstock there going on. So the brain, dopamine was our reward. It drove us to do these things that were going to keep the humanity around and developing. So when you think about dopamine, remember it's a primitive drive. And remember that what it's not about is intelligent thinking. When dopamine is running the show, we're operating in our, what I call just generally the animal brain. This is where we react. This is just reflexive. We respond to what's happening in front of us. And there's a good system for that, because if you're driving a car and a car is coming over in the lane in front of you, the brain is not going to give you time to think, well, it's coming at this angle and I'm going this fast, and no, you put on the brakes, you swerve, you do whatever it takes. You see a snake, you don't stop. If it's close by, you don't stop and go, I wonder if it's poisonous. No, you back up, you get out of there. And that's so for the first 15 seconds, we don't have access to our brain. It's dopamine that's running the show. Now, the challenge is that anytime you're feeling fearful or anxious or stressed or like you're unsure of what's going on, the brain goes into that survival mode. That survival mode that is all about physical protection, which means it takes all the blood, the oxygen, all of those resources that you would want for thinking, for, the most modern and highest of your intellectual abilities. It takes it all away, puts it in the muscles and the bones, and that's where you get the fight or the flight. Now you're gonna do something physical, but you're not going to do a lot of thinking. So look at this side of this of the slide that says your thinking brain is being hijacked as dopamine increases. And let me just give you even a better visual of that. If you think about this as your animal brain, a lot of your dopamine comes from there, comes from other places, but mainly from there. And what it does is it actually puts a roadblock up to the pathways, the highways between this emotional part where you're going, I can't, this client's driving me crazy, up to this part is actually blocked by dopamine. Think of it as a roadblock and call it dopamine, and you'll have a really good sense of what's going on. It's not your fault, but what happens when we need our thinking, we need our cognition, all of our ability to think our way through a problem, what happens? The brain out of order. Now, the challenge is in real estate, you are dealing with the issues that automatically trigger the brain to feel like it's at risk, and it goes into survival mode. It's not surprising that your clients are oftentimes not at their best intellectually, or that you, being in these situations, don't necessarily have all the resources you want for your thinking brain, because look what you're dealing with all the time. Loss of any of these elements causes the brain to think it's actually in threat of survival, because it's thinking, I won't be able to, at a very basic level you not aware of, it's thinking about, I won't be able to take care of myself. I won't be able to protect my family. I won't be able to survive in this world. So all of these things that you're dealing with as the core of your business are potential triggers for people to go in these states of behavior and thinking where they're not able to be present and active with you in a logical, reasonable, and productive way. I mean, think about it. When you talk about property or investments, you're looking at a potential loss, imagined, not necessarily real, imagined or real, of time, money, respect, status, and positions. And look at the bottom of the slide. That to the brain computes threat to survive. So what are our possibilities to get out of that and get into a deal, a good closing where everybody feels great about it, where if there's real team effort? Well, because this is a component of your work, it's just built into what you do. The first thing is to understand, yes. And that's what makes you an expert, is not just about understanding your products, but understanding that these are elements that will be in your office and in your relationships with your clients, playing in the background at all times. And here's the thing, it happens instantly. So the blood the dopamine goes up, the brain says, uh-oh, fear survival, I'm on alert. It directs all the blood and the oxygen away from the brain. And that means that when it comes time for integrity, for the kind of transparency and the relationships you want, that you'll see people compromise those things, their values, their knowledge, all of these things that are important because of this fear. And it happens so quickly that unless you're really aware of what's going on, it blindsides people. It really does hijack their brains. And well, here's a technical term, we go dumb. Just when we want most to be on the top of our game and be really focused in being able to take in all the information and interact in a calm, cool way, our brain would want to take us into a state of numbness, of dumbness. Not at all what we're looking for. And there's another feature to this, that dopamine is highly addictive. Now, that doesn't make it any easier, does it? It means that the excitement that people get out of being upset and anxious and stressed also gives them a fix of dopamine. Do you notice how sometimes we go into conversations and one of the first things that we start to talk about is, what was happening, that there was some, illness or something in the news. Can you believe how terrible it is? Well, right at that moment now, what I want you to do is think about it. Think of what it is, maybe something on cable television. They're so good at hyping up dopamine, and they're so good at having us addicted, coming back to watching that plane crash again, the scenes in the Ukraine again, the politicians and their shouting and their posturing. All of that is dopamine. And our politicians are addicted to it. They need more and more and more to ramp up the audience who's getting their dopamine, and then they get more. And this is where we get so little positive activity in Washington. And this is where you see people who are addicted to creating scenes and problems and challenges, because behind it all, and they have no idea what's going on, they're getting this squirt of dopamine, which makes them feel more alive, more excited, more energy. And if you understand that this brain scan shows the ventral tegmental area, which is where dopamine registers when we get it, whether it's from coffee or whether it's heroin and amphetamines or any of the rest of these substances, they all register in the same part of the brain. So when we're amping ourselves up in an argument or really into the awfulness of something, we are activating the same part of the brain in a smaller way than these other addictive substances. So it's not surprising that humanity as a whole wants to move towards the problems, talking about those, and then getting really into them. And can you believe? And or you have a client who's just feeling more alive by coming into your office already, ready for bear. So now I've got good news for you. And that's why when I say I'm happy to be here, Arizona, I really mean it at a very deep level, because I have a few fixes and some pieces of information that are really going to be tools that you can use to improve the results of your career and the well-being in your life, which is a great, a great job. I like my work. All right, so the 3 quick dopamine fixes. Number 1 is we need to understand all these things that in our life all the time that are negative, but we're getting a reward for it. We're getting jazzed by it. And so we're going to find out what those are, and you'll see it in yourself and in others, and have some objectivity about that and be able to make choices. The next one is we're going to understand visually and from your senses, what are the red flags when this stuff is starting to happen? Maybe before it gets to a high burn. It's where you can start to notice them in a room, in yourself, and you can stay ahead of this, not letting dopamine take away your higher thinking and your skills and your expertise that you've worked so hard to develop. And the next one is how to take control of it, how to manage it. And that's pretty powerful because if you think about in the world, how few people are able to do that and how different it would make our world if they did. Our quick fix number 1. All right, let's look at the negative dopamine rewards. Would you ever think that you could feel better because you were going to be involved in any of these things? And maybe some of the risk taking, but when it comes to business, again, unless you can think and really think well, these things can intercept a deal, a relationship, office dynamics. And yet when you understand that, and you're saying to yourself, why is this going on? Why do I do this? Or how can they be doing this? Understand that without knowing it. And that's where the kind of compassion comes in, is without knowing it, we're really feeling some pleasure, not in what's being said, but in ourselves, in that aliveness. And we keep going back to it more and more because dopamine, remember, is addictive. It brings us back to whatever behavior gave us some pleasure. Now, the challenge is because it's addictive, remember, like with any addictive substance, addicts need more and more just to get back to a level of feeling okay, which is why, depending on what else is going on in their lives, you might see people who just stir up an argument or a fight, or couples that do that, or the people in the office who do that. And you probably have some clients who are just looking for a minute to, a way to be a little aggressive and stir up the anger, the fear. And that's because they almost need to. If this is a pattern, if there are any patterns like this in your life or that you see in people, know that treat them like an addict, that they actually need that, without knowing it, to feel okay. Otherwise, they get bored. They can start to think about addicts who detox, whether it's alcohol or drugs, whatever it is, they feel horrible when they don't have it. They feel depressed and numb. And believe it or not, that's how we are as human beings too. If we don't know what's going on, and if there aren't some other things in our life to balance this out and to make it different, we can be addicted to these things that really cause us harm, or at the very least, don't get us where we want to go in life. Fix number 2, identify the red flags. Okay, so notice this. Think about this next time anybody walks into your office. Notice it for you and for them. It's sometimes easier to notice it in them, of course. But when you start to hear these kinds of comments, or you feel their, the tone of voice and the energy and the way they're presenting themselves, that feels just rude, and it feels aggressive, and it feels like it's trying to stir something up. And there's argumentative, you say something and you're just trying to discuss it, or you're just trying to share information, maybe helpful information. And what you're doing is you're getting a pushback, like you're attacking them. And it makes no sense. And that's where human beings get out of sync, can't communicate right. But you can now look. And when you start to see these things and look at their breathing, this is really the key, because no matter how they may be masking it otherwise, If their breathing is shallow and rapid, that's because their brain is not getting enough oxygen. And why isn't their brain getting enough blood and oxygen? Remember, because of dopamine. Their dopamine is so high that it is sending all their resources for this aggressive, argumentative posturing and behavior, mentally or physically. And this is a sign that that's where they're functioning from. They do not have full access to their higher thinking capacity. Now, notice that in yourself too. That phone call on your cell phone and you see that name, your breathing changes instantly. And that's because, again, in your carotid arteries, right here, there's gauges, and the brain is sensing, do I have enough oxygen? Do I have enough blood? Well, when the dopamine says, uh-oh, it's a threat of survival, remember this behavior from this other person, we're working with all this money that could be lost. All of a sudden, the brain senses there's not enough oxygen. And it's going to take all of that as a sign. I am under attack. I am being threatened. And I better breathe rapidly and very shallowly to try and get enough oxygen to even go out to my muscles and bones. So that these are great signs. And I'll put you way ahead in the game because these are things that you don't have to talk about. These are things that you just observe. Now, what you want to do if you're going to really be in charge is you want to anticipate that every situation with every person, every time has dopamine as an element. And it can be in a positive way where it's exciting and you're sharing in creating a project or celebrating some kind of a success, or it can take you down and go the other direction. But anticipate that every situation will have dopamine because it does. Because listen to this, there is no thought, there is no experience that doesn't have an effect on your dopamine level. So it's just a matter of degrees. And you want to be able to go into a room, any situation, a phone call, and you want to be able to know, yep, there's going to be dopamine there. So you're going to observe. And when you observe, what you do is you depersonalize it. You're not taking it personally that someone comes in aggressive, who comes in ready for an argument or a confrontation of some kind. You know this is them and their dopamine. And what you don't want to do is reciprocate more of it from you, because what is that going to do? It's going to amp up that person. That is fuel for more dopamine, more fear. And as yours go up, yours goes up, theirs goes up, and you watch where things get out of control. It doesn't have to now. You're in a different place now. So observe. Take a look at this picture. I like this picture when I chose it. It's not just one of those stock photos, to fill up space. Look at this. Let's start with, look at the expressions in that room. They're all kind of different, aren't they? What do you see in that? Okay, where would you think that if you're knowing that there's dopamine there, maybe we could say that there's dopamine between the two women kind of in the front who are sharing something positive and enjoying the excitement of that dopamine. But what about the two people in the back? What do you see in there? Each of them is a little different. Okay, use the skills that we were talking about. Looking at body language. What are their shoulders? It looks like the one with the jean jacket is holding her breath. What would that tell you? Short, rapid breathing. She's got some dopamine going there in some way that is, she's feeling threatened. Is she being left out of the conversation? The deal? Is she not being respected? And what about the lady with the red hair? I don't know for sure, but there's something going on. And so you could anticipate now that these people are in those conditions, and you can depersonalize it. They're having their own experience, and you're not going to add to it by raising your own dopamine. Okay, now, so knowing that, before you make a phone call, before you go into any conversation at all, entering a room, a meeting, and definitely before making important decisions, you want to make sure that brain has all the oxygen it needs, right? Remember, that is where you access your good thinking, your creative thinking, your leadership, and where you develop this kind of sense of confidence and strength that other people recognize. Now, I'm going to show you what you can do here. And it's going on. It could go on even in this scene. Can you imagine how anybody in that scene is taking 5 to 10 slow deep breaths? Maybe not. But take a look at the man with his head turned. And I would invite you right now, if you're in front of anything where you can put your elbows, to just lean forward like he is. Okay. And you'll see that your body is somewhat at a slant as you're doing that. And what you can do right now, no heavy breathing required. That would definitely change the dynamic, but that's what I'm looking for. And now if you will just notice your breathing, let your abdomen expand as you breathe in, and then slowly breathe out. You don't have to open your mouth, just do it through your nose, breathing in deeply and slowly as the conversation goes on. And one of the things I've noticed, and I've had reported back by people with whom I work, is that when you do that, there's a kind of calm that sends a sort of message out to the room or the people with whom you are involved. And your quietness, and you keep eye contact, so you're engaged in the conversation, seems most people will either notice, so quiet, but paying attention. And when people are paid attention to, they relax. And what we've discovered is that as you do that, you can most times, you bring the energy down to a good working level, to a positive level. And I have a friend who's been in real estate for a very long time, who uses it. She said it's just changed her whole experience in the business, just to know these things that we've talked about so far. And this is so simple. Again, no equipment, no special training. You can just use this anytime. Oops, I want to go back there. Now, another thing that will empower you to get everyone on board using their brains in positive ways is to understand that 93% of all of our communications are not the words we use. They are nonverbal. This was an experiment run 3 times because it was so dramatic that they couldn't believe it. So they replicated the study 3 times, and they discovered that everything but the words is doing the communication in large. Look at this. 55% of the messages have to do with what they see in the way we hold our body, the way we move, the eye contact. What are we expressing through our face and our body? 55%, that's more than half of the message. And then how do we use our voice? What is the way that the pacing of it, the volume of it? I mean, think of the difference that makes of all these things now. Remember, we've been talking about what were those red flags when you see it coming at you? Well, think about how much of a message you got before they even opened their mouth. And then when they open their mouth, and depending on the volume and the speed and how they force it into it, whatever they're saying, now we've got up to 93%, and not a word is in the equation yet. Now, it makes you wonder, when we're on our cell phones, when we're on our computers, how difficult it is to really communicate. Now, we've got emojis, but not the same. And I believe that that's a huge part of some of the problems we have today, where things are misunderstood, where people don't feel like they're seen or heard, and they act out because of it. Sometimes in violent ways, sometimes in depression and isolation. But if you understand that when you're with people as you are, that's the beauty of it. And so much of your work is with people, or it's on Zoom. Thank goodness for Zoom in these days. At least we have that. But you can't see my whole body, not the way if we were together. And you can't even see as closely for my breathing and that kind of thing as you do with someone across the desk. But if you know right away that the words are important, but the way you deliver them, show your intentions and make the actual communication. All right, now the good news is We've got those 3 quick dopamine fixes. And if you can understand why people are going back over and over again and repeating negative behavior, it's because they're getting that dopamine, even though it can undermine their career, their relationships, and not getting them the outcomes they want. You can recognize those red flags. Remember what those are: fast breathing, shallow breathing, aggressive postures, voices that are bullying. Recognize those and then depersonalize them. Observe them. Stay up here with your breathing, slow and deep, so that you can watch them, you can acknowledge them, and then you know what to do with them and how to really interact and how to invite them now when you take control with your breathing, with your calm, with your strength and confidence, because you know what's going on and it's not you. 99 and 9/10% of the cases. Now you own your brain and you are able to move into this reward. This is where you want to go. This is the golden zone. This is where you operate your brain at its highest level of functioning. This is where you can really do analytical thinking. You're not distracted with these fears and this kind of protection and the kind of distractions that keep you from really zeroing in on the best analysis. The big picture planning, you can begin now to see, and you've got complex numbers and deals that come in from with all kinds of variables involved, where you need to be able to put these together and to be able to share them with your clients, where you can see where if you do this and you take care of that, that you will be able to manage the situation, the project, grow your firm, whatever it is you want to do, invite in more clients, whatever it is that's important to you. This is where you're going to be able to now move into, take that kind of understanding. If you can manage who you are. You can help other people to be at their best. And now you come together and create a synthesis, a team synthesis of creative problem solving. So you can take pieces of this and pieces of that and different regulations and different stipulations and all the things that you have to think about, which are enormous, and put them together. But you can invite in others. You can see solutions other people won't see because they're so busy defending themselves or worried about some way are they at risk of losing something that they care about. Remember, their time, money, resources, possessions, status. And because of that, you can really manage who you are. You can be the person you want to be. If you start to feel you're getting tense in your shoulders, your breathing is short, you're not going to say or do the things that really represents the best of you. But now you know that. So you can use your emotions appropriately. You can make choices. If this is all about decision making, it's communication and decision making and being able to look at a lot of information as you do and curate it, bring it together into the best possible solution. And this is what you can do when you just use those 3 fixes. This is where you want to go because this is the highest function. This is the human brain. This is the payoff right there. And there's one feature too that's so important, and that's empathy. Now you're going to be able, because you've depersonalized what their behavior is, you are able to observe, you know that you're in control of who you are, what you're saying and do. And now you can move into this zone, which is one of the highest levels of human functioning, and that is this empathy, compassion. Because it's no threat to you that you can hear the other person, that you can understand their needs. You can see their fears because you have this strong inner core. And this is what you get. You end up with these things that that make you a star in your field, but also make you more the human being you want to be. You can develop these qualities that just naturally draw to you: loyalty, and cooperation. And all that stress that comes from real estate about, the money end of it, when and if and how much, you'll have more predictability. You'll feel more secure in the business, and you can be a leader. Now, whether you choose to be a leader and be the treasurer of your association, going to be the president, or whether it's about being a leadership in a project or a deal, that people will trust you. They understand that you know who you are and that you're in control of what you are, not in a way for an effect, but just because you're in control to be the way you want to be, to express who you really want to be. And that's powerful. That is the power that people recognize, but they don't push back against it because it feels right, because it has that element of empathy. What do you get? Better outcomes in every way. Absolutely. You'll find that life just feels less threatening. You go into any situation, you're solid the way you are in any circumstance. Most people are trying to guess who to be, what to say, what to do, not you. And you drive your own brain. You've got this advantage. I call it the dopamine advantage, but it's just a huge overall advantage because you're not going to be hijacked. You're not going to be sidetracked. You're not going to be taken off task and dissipating your energy and your good potential to do really outstanding work or to be the human being that adds to the world, because you understand this dopamine advantage, what it is and what to do with it. And now I'm just going to share with you what I call, just briefly, the dopamine advantage bonus. Now, when you know how to use those three fixes, and your dopamine you've got dopamine working for you, what you can do, and I can't have time. I don't have the time to explain all of it, but I can explain enough to tell you that I like to call this the closing cocktail, because it's one part dopamine, and this is what you're understanding now about how to apply it, how to manage it, how to use it to effect and for your purposes. And when you do that, these other parts of the brain chemistry, which I could talk about another time, come into alignment. So what you end up with is you can deliberately use dopamine for excitement. You can then use what that does, that allows you to be in your calm, using the best part of your brain, which also produces serotonin. Now, this communicates to other people when you're in that state, a kind of calm and confident. This is where your experience and your commitment to your profession all shine. And the other part, now, when you do that, you've got the excitement, you've got the calm, you've got this sense of cooperation and their confidence that you know what you're talking about and they trust you. Now you get the oxytocin, and this is where human beings bond as friends. This is where people relax and you really become a team because you're there for each other. So this is all I can tell you in this short time. I want to be sure to leave time for questions and answers. I want you to know that I am here for you. If you have some quick questions, afterwards, they come to mind. If I can answer them in a brief email, please be in touch. I'm here for you. If you would like to do more with your firm or even revisit this video, I encourage you to do that. If I can do more for you, let me know, either individually with brain coaching or with your firm or whatever it might be. That's great. I'm here for you, and I hope you'll be in touch. But also know, if it's just a quick question, I'm happy to answer that for you. So be in touch and enjoy closing those deals. Do you like that photo?
Thank you so much, DC.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
DC, did you want to explain the part 2, or did you want us to go over that? I do have a poll to launch.
Yeah, go ahead. And why don't you do that while you're launching it? I'll just talk about it a little bit. You put it out there. Barb and Brittany and I were talking yesterday about the possibility of a part 2 where we can go into more information to really build your knowledge base and your skills about using your brain, where we talk about more specific kinds of things, our addiction to our devices and what to do about it, how to deal with bullying, how to use it for leadership skills, and in solving, really using it as a problem-solving tool. And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in doing that, then let Barb and Brittany know now with this poll or later, and we can arrange for another one of these conversations, maybe in October, if that sounds like something you want to know. And maybe you have just all you think you need right now. And if later on you think, oh, I like this, I'd really like to know more, maybe you can get back in touch with Brittany or with Barb.
Perfect. And it looks like they're all interested. So we will definitely work on putting that together.
Okay, great. And now let's take some questions. Anybody want to raise your hand and ask a question? It can be personal or professional, something that seems important in your firm maybe, or with some problem clients.
I'll go for it, DC.
Okay, Mandy.
Oh, sorry. So as a broker, I have a lot of problems that are brought to me on a daily basis, and I have to pivot in 2 seconds from issue to issue to issue to issue. I don't have a minute to take for myself. I know how to depersonalize real estate. But when clients and brokers aren't caring and they're letting their dopamine, the red flags, lead the way, I quickly usually shut down the conversation because we're not face to face. And I say, from this point on, everything will be in writing, so there's no misunderstandings, and you can't speak to me that way if they're cussing or they're, just not calming down. This is not professional. It's not leading to a solution. So take some time and I'll call you back. And we end up hanging up sometimes pretty abruptly. It's not my favorite thing at all. And it actually causes me a lot of stress when I leave, even though I try to keep it depersonalized, but you can't. So is there a better way to defuse a situation that seems out of control as the one trying to stay calm? That's not directly, it's going to be in writing and we're going to end this conversation.
First of all, I just want to acknowledge that as human beings, it's not like we're Teflon, that it doesn't affect us, of course. However, what I would encourage is that while the person is ranting and raving out of control, is that you're really focused on a couple of things. One is that you're breathing and really doing your breathing. And another thing, and this may sound odd, but putting your attention to your toes, because a lot of what they're saying, you don't have to really pay attention to. But the interesting thing is, as you do this, you'll actually take in more information because it's not being infused with the emotions and that you're naturally feeling. But if you put your attention to your breathing and your toes, what happens is that it seems to breathe, and I do all my work in fMRI with MRIs, and you can see that the brain comes back into some coherence. Now, as you do that, there is a kind of energy that you send to the other person, and I'll talk more about that, how that energy works. It's very scientific. To the other person, when you are doing that breathing and you're listening, and you're not jumping ahead to try and think, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to say? You just kind of let them do it. But then when you get to the point, you say, you know what? Let's just put this in writing. It's in a different, remember, it's a tone of voice now. That's all you've got on that phone call. And if you're breathing, it comes from a more relaxed voice. So you're not buying into their agitation or whatever you want to call it. Lots of names for that. And you are just able to let them say what they're saying. And then, with all sincerity, then you can say it with sincerity. It's just, I really want to understand everything that you're saying. Let's put this in writing. And so you acknowledge this person who is partially doing this because they probably have a history of getting off on it. And then also that you're not trying to correct them or say anything, you're just listening. And you can even say that, I'm really, really listening to what you're saying. And I want to make sure I get all of it. let's just from here on out, let's just really put it in, let's just put it in writing. I know that I can give you better, I can give you better service that way, or whatever you want to say. I can understand it better. I really want to know. And that's the message, is that calms them down. Remember, this is got to do again with survival. They're protecting something, and you don't even have to know what. But when people are listened to, their anxiety drops down, their stress drops down, and all you've got is your tone of voice, really, because the words aren't going to be that important. Okay. Lori, did you have your hand up? Lori Burris? Oh, okay. Yeah, Millicent.
So, hi. So can you hear me clearly?
Very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want a comment to say that this is an excellent presentation. The information is great. And it's not just for real estate, and I know that every real estate agent is highly stressed now, all the emotions from clients and what is happening in the industry. But it's also good for, relating to our kids, if you have children, especially in their teenagers. I wish I knew this. I had this picture when my kids were, teenagers. And it also helps with your marriage. It goes everywhere. And I think this is some very good information.
Yeah.
And I like the question that came in and the way you explained it. So it's a very good example of how to handle, when you are on top and you're dealing with something like that, or when you are with peers and you're dealing with something like that. So thank you very much. I'm interested in going forward to the next level, looking at maybe ego, and also looking at gender and things like that in terms of this information.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Millicent. Yeah, there's absolutely is a lot to know about that. Thank you. And you're right. It's all about just being the human beings we want and creating the kind of reality we want to live in. And that's our business and everything else. Other questions? No? All right.
Thank you so much, DC. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I hope you all enjoyed the session. And as I said, we will send out the link to the recording if you want to revisit it today. And we will let you know when we schedule part 2, of course.